Hi, everyone. It's Kristan Hawkins, and welcome to this episode, explicitly pro-life podcast. This is the special election season. We only have a couple of weeks left to go, actually less than 2 weeks to go before the presidential election, and elections are being held across the country on Tuesday, November 3rd. If you haven't voted yet, make sure you get out and vote, and you vote pro-life first. But that's what we're going to talk about today. And the question I have is, can you say you're a Christian, and can you be maybe a good Christian, and vote for a pro-abortion candidate? You know who I'm talking about. All right, so Jason Jones is my good friend, my crazy good friend. He's joining me tonight on the podcast. Hey, Jason.
Hey.
All right, so Jason is the founder of Movie to Movement. You've probably seen him. He helped create films like Bella, Crescendo. He has a brand new movie out with NFL champ Ben Watson called Divide Hearts America. It's streaming right now on Salem Now. You've seen Jason. He was in the pro-life movement for years in multiple capacities, then moved to Hollywood. And so he's got an incredible personal testimony. If you've never heard Jason and his story, you definitely need to look up Movie to Movement. It's movieToMovement.org, or follow him on Facebook. He also writes a weekly column, I believe, in the Stream, often with John Zamirak, has a book with John. So Jason, when I was thinking about this podcast, I was like, you are the person we need to talk to, because we often hear about this, seamless garment, consistent life ethic, and how, all these issues are important, which all of us agree on. But then it's almost always used as an excuse to then vote for pro-abortion politicians. And there was just a pretty big Catholic bishop who came out recently, Bishop Barron, with kind of like a guide that basically said you can vote for Joe Biden or any other pro-abortion politician, even if you're pro-life, because you can do it in like fake protest or something. I haven't been following the full phenomenon. I've been a little busy trying to like get people elected here, but can you tell me what's going on and why it's bad?
Yeah, no, well, Kristan, I am, as you know, I coined the term whole life, launched the whole life movement as a way.
I argued about that in the past, but we'll keep going.
We have argued about that, and you were kind of right. You said it'll just be co-opted by the other people. But my whole goal, when almost 15 years ago now, I launched whole life, which now is being used by a lot of groups on the left to really mean seamless garment.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why I launched Whole Life is I do believe that there are issues that are like and commensurate to abortion. And so when people on the left say, you think that there's no issue that's like and commensurate to abortion? No, of course I do. Genocides are like and commensurate to abortion. Democide is the state killing its own citizens, not based on ethnicity or religion or because they're a minority, but just to secure state control. So genocides, democides, unjust total war, the intentional targeting of civilian cities with nuclear weapons. If there was a candidate running who said, I'm going to run for president and I'm going to drop nuclear weapons on 8 of the world's largest cities, that would be like and commensurate to abortion. So, and for me, it all began with, as you know, my personal story. I discovered abortion when my child was destroyed by a forced third trimester abortion, and I was a young soldier. And so my experiences in the military, my own personal experience with abortion, I didn't come from a Christian tradition or background or even conservative political background. I just discovered the issues sort of like blank slate. So I never saw a difference between abortion and the other crimes against human beings, because a child in the womb is a human being. Absolutely. So the horror of abortion in America is like and commensurate to the Holocaust. But what it's not like and commensurate to is what's the best way to provide health care? What should minimum wage be? $12, $14, or $16? So what Bishop Barron did, and Bishop Barron, I'm going to be very clear, he's respected. Mm-hmm. But Bishop Barron thoughtfully is very manipulative and deceitful. I'm just going to say it straight. And now he's spinning. He's spinning now because, people have responded to his video. What he said in his video, and I'm going to say this clear. This is what he said. He said, you can vote for a pro-choice candidate if you're voting for them in spite of their position on abortion, not for it. So
replace abortion with the word slavery and see how people would do with that.
You know what exactly, or what I said on my podcast is say, the intentional, what is abortion? The intentional direct killing of the child in the womb, or Joe Biden, for example, supports taxpayer-funded abortions up to the moment of birth. The intentional destruction of the child in the womb with taxpayer money up. You can vote for Joe Biden if you're voting for him in spite of that. Take the child in the womb and say, put in Armenian, put in Uyghur, put in Yazidi. But here's the really sorrowful thing, Kristan Hawkins. I don't see Bishop Aaron speaking out for the Uyghur because the Catholic Church, I'm Catholic, as you know, I'm very passionate, has a deal with China. Even our Holy Father has been silent on the 3 million Uyghur in concentration camps having their organs harvested. So this is why you know I'm the biggest fan of Students for Life of America and your students, because to stand up for the child in the womb on a university, what that tells me is that if you're working at the Department of Defense, you will stand up for civilians when it comes to drone strikes. I know that later on in life, when you have to make a brave decision to go against the interests of everyone in the room, you will have the courage to do that. But what we have seen from a lot of our celebrity priests and bishops and celebrity Christians like Phil Vischer, the creator of VeggieTales, who just made a video similar to Bishop Aaron's, abandoning the child in the womb to violence. But these people have also been silent on the ethnic cleansing of Christians in Iraq. They don't make that, and Students for Life, to me, why? And I've been saying this since I met you and since I've seen the rise of Students for Life over the past decade. It is the most important organization in America because these students are learning to stand with the vulnerable when there's a cost. And so many people with influence never stand with the vulnerable when there's a cost. But here's the deal. There's always a cost to stand with those who are truly vulnerable. And so, yeah, to answer your question, you cannot vote for a candidate that supports the intentional direct killing of innocent human people funded by the state. And under no circumstances. I mean, maybe if you have one candidate who supports taxpayer funding of abortions and another candidate who says, when I'm elected president, I'm going to launch a thermonuclear war. Okay, I'm going to attack Europe with nuclear warheads. Okay, maybe then you would have to.
Because it's not about limiting the evil, right? It's about there's no perfect candidate. Jesus Christ is obviously not running for president of the United States or any office. So anytime you vote for any candidate, you're voting for a flawed human being. You're probably not going to agree with them, and they're probably going to, on every issue, and they're probably going to make mistakes. But I'm voting to lessen the evil of abortion and to bring about the end of abortion in the fastest way I believe is possible to end that killing. I mean, I don't know, because you've always subscribed to this whole life ethic. You and I've sparred about that, but you are a seamless garment person, and I think your organization and your life story and all that you've been doing with bringing the plight of the vulnerable, bringing that.
So are you. But so are you. But here's what frustrates me.
We all are.
Huh?
We all are. Like, I don't any pro-lifer who doesn't care about the Uyghurs or doesn't care about Christians in Iraq being, murdered. Like, we all care. But like, of all the people, like, you actually stood with you've gone to Iraq. Like, I've yelled at you about you're stupid. I go, why are you doing that? You're a dad. Like, you could get killed. Don't do that. Don't go over there. But you stood with these people, but yet if anybody who says I'm a consistent lifer, like, I would say you would have like 100% street cred because you've stood with all these different groups and these vulnerable and these persecuted peoples across. The first time I ever met Uyghur was because of you. You brought a couple of gentlemen to a meeting in DC, and you said, "Hey,
brought the prime minister in exile of East Turkestan to a meeting." Yep, who's Uyghur?
Yeah, and so I was like, "Who are the Uyghurs? What are you talking about, Jason?" And then
Eric Metaxas says every time he meets me, he discovers of a new people group that exists that he didn't know, and they're being persecuted. But and for me, this is my heart, because I was helpless as a father to protect my own child. So I am literally, as you called me crazy, I'm a bit nuts. I am addled. I am addled by the idea of children being exposed to intentional, direct, lethal violence. And nothing upsets me more than when people use political tactics to abandon the vulnerable to violence, whether it's children in Yemen, on Mount Sinjar, in East Turkestan, or in the womb. And so what we see with a video that was made, make no doubt about it, go watch Bishop Barron's video. That video was made to respond to the idea that you cannot vote for Joe Biden. Bishop Barron and his word on fire crew lack the courage to speak clearly. The only time they speak clearly is when they are selling their goods. Watch it. They sell their word on fire Bible. It's very efficient, very clear, great sales pitch. You know what they're selling, this Bible. The paper is from Italy. It's assembled in Italy. Other parts of the paper comes from other parts of Europe. It's all in their sales pitch. It's very clear. They made that video to create confusion, to comfort people so they could vote for Joe Biden. Not anyone down ticket, not anyone anywhere else. But here's the real problem with this. The real problem with this is Donald Trump, and you know I was almost a never Trumper. He has been a blessing. This administration has been a blessing to those suffering food insecurity around the world.
Racist?
Come on. Come on. Yeah, that's what they say, right? It's calumny. And I believed it. You know, I didn't trust him. He speaks like a New Yorker from Queens. My mother-in-law, who fled the fall of China to come to this country, was on the Trump train really early. And I kept saying, he's a bigot, he's a racist, he's this, he's that. She goes, he's not, he's from Queens. That's how we all talk. This is my immigrant mother-in-law. You know, but I was slow. It took me a while. Mm-hmm. But I'm not, I mean, look, I might be prideful, but I'm going to put my pride aside when it comes to seeing the real world benefit. This administration, we saw the end to ISIS, the closing of the ISIS rape camps. The caliphate is gone. The battle against extremism and Islamism is going to go till the end of time. But the people of the Nineveh Plains have been liberated from this nonsense. In fact, I was in Iraq when he won, and during the week of the inauguration, and the Muslims in the displaced persons camps were cheering because they were so excited. They told me that now that Trump's president will get to go home. And I thought they were kind of naive. They were right. These men in these camps knew before I knew that Trump would allow them to go back home. The COVID shutdowns have led to a constriction of food production, processing, and distribution. USAID and the political appointees in this Trump administration, David Beasley from the World Food Program just won the Nobel Prize because they have been so on it to try to stem the tide of hunger, potentially the worst year in famine since World War II. But this administration has been on top of it from the beginning of COVID to make sure the most vulnerable in the world are meeting their nutritional needs. Of course, did you know that? Is the new media covering this? No, they're not covering this. So you're right, there is a consistent ethic for life. When you have a president that respects the child in the womb, you can imagine that from there will flow some sort of logical consistency. Does it mean that Donald Trump is St. John Paul the Great? No, of course not. He's a developer from Queens. But I can vote for him proudly with full confidence. But I do understand there are some people, they have lots of issues or they come from different communities. They're like, I can't vote for Trump because of X, Y, Z. That is fine. But what I can say is under no circumstances can anyone who really is committed to the child in the womb, or the Yazidi in Sinjar, or the Uyghur in East Turkestan, or the hungry in Bangladesh, or those who worry about the people of Syria, because if Biden is president, there will be a war in Syria, mark my words, and there will be 800,000 displaced Christians and other minorities, dead and displaced. You can't color the bubble in for, he's the war party president. He's the war profiteer president. He's the abortion president. He actually is consistent. He has the culture of death from beginning to end. So the Bishop Barron made this video. I'm going to invite him on my podcast. I can't imagine he would stoop so low as to come onto my podcast. But as a man who lost a child to a forced third trimester abortion, I was extremely insulted by Bishop Barron's video. And what's even more insulting is the Word on Fire employees spinning on Twitter and misrepresenting the LifeSite News article on Bishop Barron's video.
Why? I guess the question is why? Why do you think the Bishop Barrons and the other folks that have been spinning and kind of saying this stuff, how can they do it? Because I have a hard time. I see things a lot of times in black and white. You're killing babies. It's wrong. Therefore, how could I ever trust you with anything? And nothing kills more people every single day in America than abortion. Therefore, I'm going to vote for the person who's going to stop that killing. So to me, it's like, duh. But what is their justification for saying, well, you can vote for someone who wants to force every American to pay for abortions in all 9 months, or whatever? Like, what is that reasoning? Can you break it down?
Yeah, I think there's two things happening. Number one, we have to be honest. The abortion industry and the war party, the neoliberal / neoconservative war party, really, which is just an ideology of very powerful special interests coming together to share in power. They have an influence machine that's second to none. So people like Bishop Barron are inevitably influenced by these machines that use credentialed universities, credentialed institutions, people who work for these institutions, people who are part of the military-industrial complex, the Manhattan to DC corridor. They've spent their whole life in this sort of self-credentialing echo chamber. And someone like Bishop Barron, who is very clear, when he speaks, he uses the propaganda technique of transference. Like, so every time he talks, he'll say, well, Nietzsche said, or Alistair McIntyre, or Alice, he's always quoting people and he's using this to try to say, listen, I'm with them together. We, Dietrich von Hildebrand and I, he does this. It's a very thoughtful technique, which I studied in graduate school. And he's an expert in the use of the transference theory, transference and political propaganda, and his propaganda and his machine of selling products. So there's a man there who's very thoughtful and attuned to the influencers, right? But number two, and I hope this is what it is with Bishop Barron. I hope I'm wrong about all the things I just said. I hope it comes down to this. And this is, I'm going to bring up Renee Girard like I always do. The spirit of the age, the crowd, it's almost impossible to resist it. Just as Peter denied Christ when he was in the crowd, he didn't deny Christ when he was alone. He denied Christ when he was in a crowd. Bishop Barron and the major donors, the bankers, the types of folks that he hangs out with the influencers, the never Trumpers, these are the people that, have been in this sort of self-credentialing echo chamber their whole life, that they look to institutions for influence and power, that type of person. I believe that Bishop Barron maybe is just conforming to that crowd. There's a pro-life leader who you and I both, I love, but she posted recently that she was at the Women's March. And
oh my gosh, yes, please talk.
And she did not want to hold her sign up. And I thought of Jesus, I thought of Peter.
Her pro-life sign, because she says she leads a pro-life women's group.
Yeah, and I thought of Peter denying Christ when he was in the crowd. So our friend in the crowd wanted to, I think, did she deny the child in the womb? Did she hold up the sign? I don't even know.
She did after her daughter did, because the point was that her daughter was very courageous and started holding the sign, and that gave her courage to then hold the sign.
So the spirit of the crowd is very powerful. There's something wrong with you and I and the people that watch this podcast. There's something wrong with us. you're this, and I've said to you, I don't trust.
My husband would agree with that too.
Yeah, and there's something wrong with us that we are indifferent to the spirit of the age. The crowd doesn't intimidate us. Usually people who have that is because they themselves were injured by the spirit of the age. And that's why pro-lifers like you, I've told you, I don't trust a lot of pro-lifers who aren't post-abortive because I know sooner or later they're going to sell the child in the womb down the river. But you, I don't have that worry with. But when you experience an act of injustice, it's easier for you to not abandon the vulnerable. But someone like a Bishop Barron from an affluent or middle class upbringing, went to a university, went to a seminary, sort of never missed a meal. His life has always been one of comfort and prestige. Well, those are the people that have a really hard time denying the spirit of the age, looking the crowd in the face and saying, I don't care. I don't care. That's, Kristan, that is always my prayer, that I want to be with the vulnerable. I don't want to be with the rich or the famous or the powerful unless I'm leveraging them for the vulnerable. Like, that's just where I want to be. And unfortunately, most people, maybe not unfortunately, fortunately, most people haven't maybe in our movement experienced personally grave acts of injustice. So it's easy for them to be swept away.
What do you say, what do you say to that person who says Donald Trump or so-and-so is a racist, they hate immigrants? How can you be pro-life and vote for somebody like that? I mean, I know what I say, but what's your kind of response when someone's like, you can't be a Christian and vote for that man? Look what he just said on Twitter. What is your response to that? Because I find that, I have a kind of a couple of lines that I feel that work, that get people thinking, but I'd like to know how you're getting people, challenging people who have that mindset.
Well, here's the thing. We don't know if I don't know if Joe Biden is a bigot or a racist. I don't know if you are some sort of secret bigot or racist. You don't know if I am. I don't know about Donald Trump, but we can look at their words. We can look at their actions. Donald Trump is somebody who lived his whole life being on the cutting edge of civil rights. That's just a fact. Now, he talks like a guy from Queens, but I want to look at his policy. I also, look, there's Biden. If we want to look at who said things that are racist, it's Joe Biden, for sure.
Sure.
I don't even think Joe Biden's a racist. When Joe Biden was saying the most vile things that we find him saying in the 70s, as a man who was in his mid-30s, saying the types of things that he said about desegregating schools is reprehensible. But I don't believe he believed that. And a lot of my black friends tell me I'm naive, but I say I don't believe he believed that. But I think it's worse. I think he would say that's what he thought his voters wanted to hear. And he will say whatever it is they want to hear. If he thinks his people voting for him are racist, which he clearly thought, because he said, I don't want our schools to turn into a jungle. That was his comment on busing. Well, that's the same kind of guy who I believe Joe Biden knows the child in the womb is a human person. He understands all of that.
So keeping this 501c3 friendly here. I'm not talking about any particular candidates.
No, okay.
So when someone says, but so your argument is when someone says that I can't vote for this person, they're racist, or they tweeted this, your argument is, what have they actually done?
Yeah, look, we don't know. I mean, this is just smears. This is calumny. I don't want to engage in that. But let's look at, can I just give an example as a C3? I run a C3, but I'm not here representing my C3, okay? I'm here representing Hawaii. So
You'll be in trouble. It's fine.
No. So let's just use Trump's position on immigration.
Sure.
Securing the border protects the vulnerable. It protects vulnerable migrants from economic exploitation in a dangerous underground economy. It protects women from human sex trafficking, protects our children from drugs, protects Mexicans from our guns going across the border to the south. It protects working class Americans. It protects their wages. E-Verify, a mandatory, easy-to-use verification system, make sure that everyone working in this country has the same architecture of legal protection. But what the neoliberals want is the status quo, which is an economy resting on the exploitation of countless millions of illegal migrants stuck in a dangerous underground economy. Now, Donald Trump doesn't talk about the issue that way, but Laura Trump does. Many members of his family do. That's why I like his immigration policies. I believe that his immigration policies are what's best for migrants, as does Donald Trump. But Donald Trump is really what's best for Americans. I just had this office built. The folks who built this office for me were immigrants from Mexico, legal immigrants, who told me they were voting for Trump. And it shocked me. They said illegals are cutting our wages. They're undercutting us. They didn't even barely speak English. They were new immigrants, new legal immigrants who were worried about their wages being undercut. Now, as a privileged American who had an opportunity to go to a university, have a white collar job, have a middle class lifestyle, in a free society, I have to have a preferential option for the vulnerable. So I am thinking about the vulnerable Americans and their wages, but it's also despicable for us to rest our economy by design on the exploitation of countless millions of illegal migrants. And Donald Trump's policies on immigration are slowing that down. Joe Biden said he'd rip the wall up. So that's one example.
Great case.
They say he's racist because of his immigration policies, but his immigration policies are what is best for migrants.
And I love that because, one, I'm just too lazy to look into all the different policies. So people always ask me, I'm like, I don't know. I'm the anti-abortion girl. Don't ask me about all these other policies. So that was great information. But I think it's also important, too, because I think we can have, and we should, as Americans, have honest debates. And I think there are legitimate debates that need to go on as to what policies are best for the most vulnerable, or what policies are going to lift the most people out of poverty, or, is school choice the best thing we can provide to children who are trapped in inner cities, who need that best education to, break that cycle of poverty. I think those are all legitimate discussions we could have, that we want facts, we want data. But I think there's something fundamentally different about talking about school choice than we're talking about abortion, because there's a clear right and wrong. There's a clear, violent act that happens with every single abortion. There's a clear intention to end the life of every human being, whereas school choice is both people on both sides of the debate, whether you're pro school choice or anti school choice, you both want what's best for a child who's living in poverty, who's living in the inner city, who's trapped in a failing school. You just have different policy prescriptions for how to help that child, but you're still coming, both people, the left and the right, coming at it from a good place. You just have varying opinions about how to get to that outcome you want. With abortion, the outcome is a dead baby. Like, that's what we're talking about, a dead baby. And this is the thing that frustrates me so much when I hear Bishop Barron or whoever. The Bishop Barron stuff just breaks my heart, because when I was converting to Catholicism, I used a lot of the Word on Fire resources and went to their website and got information. So that just, I take it very personally. But I just feel like, have we lost the sense of what happens in an abortion facility every day? Because if we turned on the news every single night, if you turned on the news every single night and there was a terrorist attack, I mean, I think about how we took the kids to the Flight 93 Memorial 2 weekends ago, and we have this little Hawkins History Hunters thing we're doing on Instagram.
I think I was like your first 5 followers. I should get a free hat.
We might do some things crazy, like live out an RV in the near future. So I'm getting ready, because everybody who has an RV has to have an Instagram handle. Anyway, so long story, but we love going and taking the kids to different historic sites, and we use it as a homeschooling experience. So we took the kids to Flight 93, and I realized, like, they were born after 9/11. So they don't have the same feeling. When I talk about 9/11, I remember, like, my trigonometry teacher turning on the TV, the alert going out in the school, all teachers, turn on your TV now, and watching that tower fall. And then, like, I remember that. I remember that whole day, what happened during that, and the panic that set in, the fear that set in, this overwhelming feeling amongst, parents, or coming to the schools crying, picking up the kids. Like, I remember that. And it was interesting because my kids My kids don't have that same feeling of what happened on 9/11. But I know like if I turned on the news every single night and those twin towers were falling every night on the news, there was a terrorist attack happening like that, something horrific, this destruction of human life, this disregard for human life, this attacking of humans simply because they lived here. Like, no American would say, that's evil, I'm against that. But it's okay to vote for a candidate who thinks that should go on. But you can vote for him in spite of that. Like, could you imagine any bishop saying that's okay? No one would say that because we would see it on the nightly news and every single American would say that's wrong. Thousands of people are being killed every single day needlessly. We must stop this. But because we don't see what happens in the abortion facility, we forget. And we say I don't know. It bothers me to feel like people forget what happens in an abortion.
Well, and well, it's not only that, but the child in the womb is the victim of our age. So, I mean, abortion is bizarre and unthinkable, but it's normal. Segregation was bizarre and unthinkable, but let's be clear, as bizarre and unthinkable as segregation is, it's less bizarre than the intentional killing of your own child. Slavery is bizarre and unthinkable. There was a time that was normal. The anti-Semitism, bizarre and unthinkable. They had PhD programs in Germany, throughout the 30s, where you could get a degree in like racial theory, where they would be learning that the Aryan, I mean, it's bizarre and unthinkable, but it was the spirit of the age. But here's what I've learned. Why do we know the name Maximilian Kolbe, the priest who died in Auschwitz? We should not know his name. We know his name because it was rare to have heroic courage then. Mm. Why do we know the name Miguel Pro or Jerzy Popescu? Why do we know the names of these great heroes? Because in most ages, most people conform. In Mexico, under Plutarco Calles, so many priests apostatized out of fear of death at the hands of the communists under Calles. So we know the name Miguel Pro. So it's nothing exceptional to see a prominent celebrity bishop. And to be fair, he didn't like go beat the drums and blow a horn to vote for pro-choice candidates. He couldn't get away with that. What's that? He straddled the fence.
Yeah, it was a wink.
Yeah, no, it was like you got what you came there with. If you came there and you were going to vote for Trump, you're like, okay, I'm going to vote for Trump. And if you're going to vote for Biden, you're going to vote for Biden. But if you don't think it's your apostolate, this is where I'm speaking to the Word on Fire staff, Kristan, the little commercial. If you don't think it's your apostolate's role to stir the pot, then keep your mouth shut. Don't gaslight us. Don't manipulate us. Don't spin, because there's a lot at stake. And our republic, that's the theme of our movie. Now I'm going to sell my movie, Divided Hearts of America, for your audience. Discount. If you go MTM at salemnow.com, you get 20% off. But it's about this,
MTM.
MTM. But our movie is really about the secret that will unite America, which is really through what's dividing us. What's dividing us is abortion, because abortion denies our founding principle, like segregation and slavery. So what's the secret that will unite us? The Imago Dei, the image of God, the founding principle, the Declaration principle. We need to, for the first time in our country's history, because we went from slavery, we had those great amendments, the 14th Amendment, then we had segregation. The 14th Amendment made slaves citizens. But for 101 years, I believe, after the 14th Amendment, or 100 years, we had segregation. That was a brutal denial of our founding principle. I don't even know if you know this, Kristan. Do you know where the Supreme Court found the right to abortion?
Oh, you mean in Roe?
Mm-hmm.
It was like their preamble or something, wasn't it?
In the 14th Amendment, the amendment that made slaves citizens.
Oh, okay.
You know, that court was packed with Sanger-like eugenicists and racists. So it's a bit disturbing. It's disturbing.
No, but I thought there was also like a preamble thing. They found some right
number of the
yes, thank you.
Casey, I think.
I'm trying to remember my like constitutional law class.
But
No,
this is pander to your youngsters here. Can I pander?
pander to, don't call them youngsters, we guess.
I'm a grandfather. I now that I'm a grandfather, I get to use the word youngster. I think
All
that's
right, old man, go for it.
okay. So I really do believe that Gen Z is going to save America. Millennials, I'm not your fan. But Gen Z, I'm going to tell you there is something exceptional. The millennials were ambushed by technology.
Yeah.
And they were brutalized into conformity.
Yeah.
Gen Z saw this. They're not having it.
No.
So this cancel culture, this obsession with we're not going to bully, but all you do is bully like never before, and cancel. What is canceling? Ultimate bullying.
Yeah.
This inability to disagree with people. Like Kristan, you and I, no one cares. Honestly, the only person I know in the pro-life movement that works harder than me is you. And I'm telling you that I believe that. I think no one works harder than me but you. And I don't get mad at people or cancel them because they disagree with me on abortion. I write books on it, make movies on it, write articles on it, give speeches on it, lost a child to it, been doing it for 31 years. But if you disagree with me, I don't fly off the handle, unfriend you, want to punch you. You know who has this? Gen Z.
Yeah.
So Gen Z, it's your job
Right.
to save this republic. It's your job. And that consistent ethic is only going to be advanced when you can defend the truly vulnerable. And if Facebook, Google, Twitter, the NBA, if they're on your side, then you're not standing with the vulnerable. Because people who are trying to sell you things don't take risks. They don't stand with the Uyghur because they don't want to make China upset. They don't stand with the child in the world because it denies the spirit of our age and our place and our time. So I want to stand with the Uyghur. I want to stand with the child in the womb, where the crowd is flocking here and there and everywhere. I don't need to go there. I don't need to go there. And that's Gen Z's got that. Why are they so fascinating? You probably know better than me. I'm just amazed by them.
Gen Z is a lot more fun than the millennials. I'm very excited that Gen Z are now the college generation. We've been tracking it of how things are going to be changing on campuses. And with the snowflakes, as they get called, and they hate that name, graduating. But I definitely do think we have more independence and more independent thinkers. But you're right. I think you just hit the nail on the head when you're talking about Renee Girard of just wanting to be in the in crowd. I mean, that's my whole argument against, and I've said this before of, I remember being in college and I would call myself a pro-life feminist because I felt like I had to qualify the term pro-life. And I don't call myself a feminist anymore. I believe I live pretty much the life like that first and second wave feminist envision for American women. Like, I'm the breadwinner of my home. I have a college degree. I want a scholarship to college. I didn't pay a dime for college. In fact, they paid me. I live this incredibly blessed life that's, still very untraditional, I guess you can say. And so I think my life kind of is the embodiment of what a lot of these feminists were fighting for. And I remember being in college and going, oh, I'm a pro-life feminist, and using that like term feminist to almost like make myself cooler, because I knew they weren't going to like me for saying I'm pro-life. So then I added another term like I'm a pro-life feminist, I'm a pro-life Democrat. Then it's like, but look, I'm cool because you can like me because I'm going to use this other label of something that's cool and
transference theory. Yeah, it's transference. You were taking the credibility and acceptance on a college campus of the word feminist, and you wanted to bring that over to the term pro-life.
Yeah, and so I used it. But then a few years ago, I was like, why would I do that? Like, I'm just proud to be pro-life. I am proud. You can call me anti-abortion zealot all day long. I'm totally happy with that word too. Like, I don't need to qualify myself by using other terms or to make myself appear cooler to you. Like, I am proudly pro-life. I'm proudly anti-abortion. But I think that's the same deal when we're looking at the Bishop Barons or whoever who says these things of, it's this fear of not being liked. It's this fear of not being accepted or in the in crowd. And I think that's a real problem of, if you are anti-abortion, if you truly believe in your heart of hearts and you know what happens inside of Planned Parenthoods and abortion facilities every day, then there is no justification for ever voting for someone who says that that's okay and should be, oh, by the way, legal in all 9 months and taxpayer funded. Like, nothing kills more people every single day than abortion. I don't know. To me, it blows my mind because it's such a simple issue. Like, either you're for killing babies or you're not. And how are you going to vote is based on that first question. And if you have two candidates, if you have a Republican and Democrat, like in West Virginia, I grew up in West Virginia, and you had to really research your candidates in West Virginia, because in West Virginia, I actually have voted for pro-life Democrats before, because I had candidates who both were anti-abortion, and then I looked at where the other issues were. But you always have to start with this issue of abortion. And I don't care if you don't like a candidate. I don't care. Like, my question is, do you hate abortion enough? Do you hate abortion enough to vote for?
Do you love the child in the womb enough?
Yeah.
Do you love women enough? Look, Bishop Barron hears confessions, right? So I know he knows. You and I, because of the nature of our work, most of our friends are post-abortive, so we hear the stories. Those of us like me who are aware of how the abortion changed my life are blessed in a way. But 1 out of 3 of us have been damaged by abortion, and it's impacted us in a way we're not even thoughtful of. Damaged us. Then they go into the confessional, they pour their heart out to the priest. Bishop Barron has heard this. He understands this. So I think he needs to learn how to love more than he's worried about being liked. Love more than worrying about selling Word on Fire books and Word on Fire Bible, whatever he's trying to sell. Worry more about the vulnerable. And it shows some thoughtfulness to foreign policy. You know, it was interesting in his video, he didn't talk about foreign policy or war at all. Like, that had to be by design, because he knows there is no defense for Biden on that. Mm-hmm. Biden voted for the war in Iraq. Trump opposed it. Biden voted to leave Iraq, which was a horrible mistake that abandoned Christians to the, quote, JV team that Biden and Obama referred to ISIS as, which, by the way, they were the JV team. But we allowed the JV team to commit a horrendous ethnic cleansing. By we, I mean the Obama and Biden administration. Our bishops and patriarchs of the Orthodox and Catholic Church in Syria and Iraq were begging us not to topple Assad. Biden and his neoliberal friends were banging the drums to topple Assad, which would have, wherever Assad was pushed back, ISIS liquidated minorities. So
Assad, a Syrian dictator.
Yeah, and he is a dictator, but that doesn't mean we love the dictator. But we love the people there enough, who, as you know, are my friends, and I go there. I hear their concerns. I listen to the patriarchs and the bishops from there. And the reality is, if you love those people enough, you're willing to say, hey, look, I oppose toppling Assad, like I oppose toppling Saddam, not because I thought Saddam was a great guy, but because I thought we would get tired of the war, leave, and there'd be a genocide. My son would have to fight in that war. We invaded. My son fought in that war. We got tired of it, left. There was a genocide. Okay? Why would Syria be different? Look at Libya. Why isn't it in the news that today in Libya, there is a black slave market? Did you know that? They're buying and selling in the town squares black slaves. This is a fact. Why don't we talk about this? Why don't we hear homilies on what's happening to the Uyghur? Their organs are being harvested. Their women are being raped. Their children are being forcibly aborted. Why don't we hear about what's happening to Christians in Nigeria? Because it takes courage. These are complex and confusing subjects, and they have nothing to do with us immediately. So Catholic social teaching for so many on the left, so many who call themselves consistent ethic, they use the vulnerable to defend candidates who they think are in their best economic interest. That's just a fact. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I call it the preferential option for myself. They'll use all the vulnerable here, there, everywhere in a hodgepodge way to advocate for a candidate who thinks serves their own best economic interests. And so if they're on the left, they'll do it. And if they're on the right, they'll do it. You see them, they're the swing voters a lot of times, right? But there is not a genuine, authentic concern for the vulnerable. Um, and the child in the womb is the canary in the coal mine. You know, when you see a politician abandon the child in the womb, that means they'll sell out all of their principles. Joe Biden has done that in his career, going from being pro-life to brackish on.
Have done that. I mean, a lot of can't. I mean, I think Al Gore at one point was pro-life. Jesse Jackson at one point was pro-life. I mean, there were a lot of Ted Kennedy was pro-life.
Al Gore. Did you say Al Gore? Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was right to life governor of the year one year, and Jesse Jackson gave the most powerful speech ever at the right to life. I think it was 76. You can download it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who you and I have known since we've been in the movement who have conformed, and there are people who we're friends with now that I'm almost certain will conform.
Absolutely.
It's sorrowful. My heart breaks for them.
And you can see it coming too, because it's what you just said. They're going to conform, and you can see it as it happens. I mean, I know you all, as you're listening and watching this, you all know. Like I remember, you know, I had friends of mine who we went to high school together, and we went to college together, and you know, they pledged a fraternity sorority. I was blacklisted for sorority because I started a pro-life group, but I wouldn't join them anyway because I was too cheap. But you could see the change happen. I remember watching, you know, just, oh, they're going to that party. Oh, they're doing that thing. And you just see the conformity begin. And then, you know, at the end of the freshman year, you're like, wait a minute, that's a totally different human being. That's a totally different person than I was friends with a year ago at graduation when we were going to be best friends, you know. And we've all seen that kind of change happen in human beings. And so I think we're seeing it and we'll continue to see it. But I think you've given everyone a lot to think about. And I would encourage folks, you can, I'm just thinking about now because literally I'm looking at your book on my desk. It's holding up my laptop right now.
The Race of Our Century?
Yeah, so it's holding, I got the Beyond the Abortion Wars by Charles Camosy, which very frustrating. And then The Race to Save Our Century, Marjorie Dannenfelser's book, Life is Winning. But you can go and get Jason's book. If you go to Movie the Movement, your website, actually, I think you can donate and get a free copy of it. So
greatcampaign.org or moviethemovement.com.
Moviethemovement.com, yeah. I think Race to Save the Century is great because everything you were just saying today, I think you've summarized, you and John summarized it very well in the book. These whole life principles, this consistent life, but then also knowing what the main thing is. And at the end of the day, we know what kills more human beings than anything else in America. And we can't forget about that while also still caring for, I don't know, I get offended when people say, oh, but you're not consistent life, are you? I'm consistent life. Like, what the heck? I'm consistent life too.
The most consistent pro-lifers I know, the most consistent ethnic pro-lifers I know would never call themselves that. But if I look at how they live their life, they live a life.
Yeah.
What's that?
I don't need a label. I don't need to qualify myself. Right.
Yeah, and you know, the reason I started Whole Life was because and you know this probably since you met me in 06, 05, I was writing against.
You told me I was going to hell, but I keep going.
Yeah, well, I was being funny. But you probably were on your way to hell. But you're good now. So on that note, I want to say this, that there is really only one way not to conform to the spirit of the age, and that's by the grace of the Holy Spirit. So I think we should ask for that. The other way is you don't want, which is to being a victim of the injustice you're standing against, right? So they're not going to get you. Or art, there's stories can tell you, stories can inspire you. My favorite play, which is also a great movie, which is behind me on that poster, Cyrano de Bergerac. My favorite version is the Gerard Depardieu version. And read Cyrano, watch Cyrano, because what we really want to do is stand, that's always my prayer. And that's why, I'm going to Iraq, hopefully, after the election. We're doing a movie in Yemen on the Saudi-U.S. drone wars. I do want to live a life leveraging the influence that I have, the relationships I have, the ability to communicate that we have,
Mm-hmm.
half of people who are vulnerable. But of course, for me, the foundation of all of that is the child in the womb. And when we as a nation honor the dignity of our own children in the womb, this is going to, nothing could change our world more than for America to have laws that defend the child in the womb from violence. And so if there's one thing you want to do to create a consistent ethic of life, and don't use culture. I hate when people changing culture. Yeah, I make movies, okay? Over 50 movies I've been a part of. But guess what? I make these movies so we have humane laws. Nothing changes culture more than a law. Nothing changed the culture more in Nazi Germany than having a radical racist regime, right? So, of course, we need to have laws that are honoring the dignity of the human person. We didn't fight the Nazis by making movies to refute anti-Semitism. It's bizarre.
No, that speaking of our certain friend, I've heard that. In the Washington Post, for example, a quote of, well, we don't want to make abortion illegal. That's not our fight. We just want to help women know that they have other options. I think that's not being honest. Because if you're actually pro-life and you're in the movement, either you want to make abortion illegal and unthinkable, or you're not really pro-life and you're not in the pro-life movement. So which one are you? If you're in the pro-life movement, you have to be honest. I always start out all my speeches on campuses being honest. Like, we want to abolish abortion. That makes it illegal and unthinkable, because the two things go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. You can't just start 3,000 pregnancy centers and say, we're going to provide resources and support, and then way down the line, eventually it becomes illegal. No, because we know, and you look at abortion statistics, look at what happens at abortion rates when Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton are handed down. They immediately shoot up because so many people equate their morality with the legality. You have to have both things. And I think it's so frustrating when people say, we're not about that. We're not about changing the law. We're not saying we want to make abortion illegal.
Martin Luther King, in his letter from Birmingham jail, criticized moderate white people,
Amen,
pastors, who were using that very argument against the legal discrimination against Black Americans. You know what made slavery unthinkable? Making it illegal. Like, even the most virulent racist in America today is not sitting around imagining having slaves work his farm. It's unthinkable to the most virulent racist. So if we want to make abortion unthinkable, let's have laws that protect the child in the womb from violence. And then maybe in 100, 200 years, it will become unthinkable. And I make movies because I do want to encourage people. I don't want to wait around for the law to save babies. Bella, we had thousands of women write us letters saying they chose life. So look, I think we need to have humane art that tells the truth about the human person. But it's also important that we have laws that tell the truth, laws that recognize the truth. And Roe v. Wade is a big, big lie. It is a lie about the nature of the human person, and that lie contradicts our founding principle. And either we overturn Roe, we protect human life in all 50 states from biological beginning, or our republic collapses. That's a promise. There's no other way around it. Because the organizational principle of our society is the Declaration principle. Yeah. We don't share a culture. We don't share a history. We don't share religion. We don't share ethnicity. We're a people from all over the world, right? So what do we share when you come to this country? I hope what we share is what the founding fathers aspired to and what they recognized, the inviolable dignity of the human person. So let's, for once, as a republic, live up to our founders' aspiration and protect the inviolable dignity of all human beings from the moment of biological beginning, not just through poetry and music and the Divided Hearts of America movie, SalemNow.com, but through law.
Mic drop. I'll drop my pen. You're done. That was it. I think that was perfect. Yeah, I have a mic over here, but it would make too much sense.
I'm not using my fancy mic. I'm using my computer.
No, it was great because you and I were having this conversation the other day, and I was just like, we need to get this out to everybody. We need to record this podcast because I think this is an important conversation that so many folks are having right now. I know my mother is certainly engaged in a lot of Facebook arguments on this issue right now. So, Mom, I hope you're listening to this episode. But I think this is something that might help each and every one of you when you're having these debates, when you're having these conversations at your parish, when you're having these conversations at the family dinner table, because we all know someone in their life who is kind of using this justification, well, I'm a Christian and I can't vote for so-and-so. So I hope you guys took a lot away from this conversation with Jason. Make sure to follow Jason on social media. Jason, how do folks find you on social media? I know I gave your website, movieToMovement.org, earlier, but what else?
My Twitter is Jason Jones, at Jason Jones Show. Can I plug my podcast?
Plug it.
The Jason Jones Show, wherever you listen to podcasts. My Twitter is at Jason Jones Show, and Movie to Movement on Facebook. Yeah,
and I was like Jason's best guest ever. Just last month, actually. I know
you were my best guest ever.
Not Ben Watson or anybody who's
just. No, you were. You're one of my favorite people on earth. As is your organization. Again, I just want to say this. Now, I know there's like students watching. You guys are tempted to this. I understand. Like, I was a high school dropout who was last in his class, went in the infantry, then went to college. I know what it's like to I felt like I didn't belong at a university. I was a bit insecure. And I know what it is like not to want to other yourself. But guess what? The only way to stand with the other in your culture is to other yourself. And then you're going to have to acknowledge in yourself the temptation to moderate your commitment to whoever is being othered. And in our society, that's the child in the womb. And especially on college campuses. So I get it. You need to wrestle with it. You need to journal about it. You need to be thoughtful about it. You need to be honest with your friends and other people in your club about it. And I get it. But once you realize the only way to stand in the solidarity with the vulnerable, again, this is Gerard, is to become as vulnerable as they are. That brave young man, Nick Sandman, they were attacking him. Gerard says something brilliant. When you stand with the scapegoat of your society, you become indistinguishable to your society from the scapegoat. Does that make sense? So when they saw Nick Sandman, they realized they were literally looking at the child in the womb. They saw that hat. They knew he was there for the March for Life. Therefore, he had no rights. He had no dignity. He could be abused, mistreated, lied about. He was literally in complete solidarity with the child in the womb. He became vulnerable. That makes him a hero. That's why you're all heroes, right? And but I know it's challenging. I know it can be tempting. I was there. But after a while, Clarence Thomas, in a great speech in 1996, I think it was to the Nashville Bar Association. I was a college student when I saw it on C-SPAN, and I'll never forget it. He said, he was speaking to the Black Bar Association, and they booed him when he walked in, but they cheered him when he left. And he said, when they booed him, he said, you know, in the beginning of my career, everything I did was for my people, Black people. And I had to make the decision to do what I thought my people would want, but what was best for them. And the first time I made a decision I thought was best for my people, but I knew I would get flack for it, was very scary, and I lost friends, and I was lonely, and I was heartbroken. Time and time and time again in my career, I had to make those decisions. And he goes, I don't know if it was just by God's grace. I always did what I thought was best for my people, Black people. He goes, now when I do what's best for my people, the American people, I'm never afraid. You can boo me, you can shout at me, you can laugh at me, and I'm never afraid because now I'm a man. And that's what happens. When we're young, when we're students, it's very hard. But sooner or later, we become like Cyrano de Bergerac. And we can stand and look at the whole world in the eye and stand side by side with the vulnerable, and we will never flinch. But it's not easy at first. It's not easy for a while, but sooner or later, you're good.
Yeah, just comes easy. It just rolls right off you. Thanks so much, Jason, for getting on tonight. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you tell your friends and family to listen and subscribe because we want them to get this great information from the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast and this special election season, mini season that we're in. So thank you all so much. Make sure if you haven't subscribed, you should subscribe. It's like on everything, iTunes, Spotify, all that stuff. You go to explicitlyprolife.com and it has all the listing and all the previous episodes, especially from season 2, which is Pro-Life 101. And there's so much great content. I forget how many amazing friends that I have and how many amazing leaders we have in this pro-life movement. So you have to check out season 2. Bye, guys.